But now I can offer hope, and there is nothing stronger in the world than hope. But I'll tell you right now, our goal for our organization is to put ourselves out of business.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Missions That Made Them. I am your host, Jason Verdelli. This isn't just a podcast, but rather it's a movement. It's a movement designed to make the world a better place by bringing more awareness to the great work of the people and organizations making a difference, and more importantly, how you can help. We live in a world today surrounded by a narrative in the media that focuses in on negativity and draws attention to the problems, but not the solutions. Our guests represent the solutions, not the problems. And with that, I am super excited today to be interviewing Cory MacDonald with the Choroideremia Research Foundation. And he's going to tell us everything about this disease, what they're doing at the Research Foundation to help cure that disease, and also just offer up a lot of different opportunities for people to get involved, people that have the disease, as well as for donors and volunteers, anybody else who's been affected by this disease to get involved and become part of that solution. Again, the whole point of the missions that made them is about the solutions. We talk about the solutions. We don't talk about the problems. And these guys are just all part of the solution. So, Cory, welcome.
Thank you, Jason. I'm looking forward to this chat today. I'm going to have some fun. I can feel it.
Absolutely. It's always fun here. So, and I know you usually are on the other side of these things, and you guys do really engage your audience, and you have your own interview series as well. So, yeah, we're in for a good one. So tell us a little bit about what CRF is about, the CRF Foundation, what it's about, and a little bit about the disease as well.
Okay, well, I'll take you a little bit backwards, and we'll start with what the heck is choroideremia. And don't worry if you haven't heard about it. I've met many ophthalmologists who've never heard of it, and it's an eye disease, so it's kind of scary in that way. We are an ultra rare retinal-degenerative disease. It's X-linked. It passes down in families. My mom was a carrier. I've traced back 5 generations, actually, in my family now of people who have gone blind. It starts with night blindness as a child. So, for instance, I don't recall ever seeing stars in the sky. And then as you get older, into your late teens, early 20s, the periphery starts shrinking down until you end up with what is called tunnel vision, which is where I've been now for a while, which is kind of like looking through a straw is the best way to explain tunnel vision. The night vision gets worse and worse. The color perception starts to go, the depth perception goes, and it eventually just kind of all ends up in total blindness. So that's the Reader's Digest version of what choroideremia is. The foundation itself got started back in '96. There was a young man from California. It was 17 years old. Before we had social media, believe it or not, there was a time, kids, before there was social media. He started an email-based support group back in '96, hosted on his college's server. And I found it pretty early on. I was probably the 4th or 5th person, I would say, to join this group. But over time, more and more people found this email group, subscribed. And at that point, there was no research going on for choroideremia at all. It affects 1 in 50,000 people. You've got less than 7,000 affected males in this country. So what big company is going to invest money in that? Nobody. And so we pretty much spent our days trying to help each other with the fact that, you're going blind and there's nothing that can be done about it. How are you going to adapt? So there was a lot of support and a lot of just, becoming a family, really. And one day there was an email thread back in fall of '99 where we were pretty much just kind of grousing about the fact that there was no research going on and no money going into research. And one of the members of the group, my cousin Bobby, made a comment in that email thread, which was basically, well, we're all together now. Why don't we do something for ourselves? And I thought that was a good idea. And there was another gentleman from upstate New York who also thought that was a good idea. And so Bobby and I and this other gentleman, we got together via conference call and decided to form the CRF. And we officially formed in March of 2000. And we are still a small grassroots organization. And when I say grassroots, I am speaking to you from the home office of the CRF, which is a desk in the basement of my house. But we have so far to this point, 22 years later, we have funded over $4 million worth of research.
Wow.
In a very short time. And that is without the help of major corporate sponsorship or, a household name person, doing commercials for us or things like that. We don't have any of that.
Right.
It's just us, our friends, and our family doing what we can. And we have gone from no research at all. And when I say no research, we didn't even have an animal model to work with. So there was nothing. And we've gone from there in 22 years to, we just finished up, unfortunately, they're not going to take it to the FDA, but phase 3 clinical trials for a gene therapy to stop the progression towards blindness. And there is also a clinical trial right now in phase 1 for a different type of delivery method for gene therapy, but it's the same thing where they're introducing the gene that our cells are missing in the back of our eye, introducing the corrected copy of the gene so that the cell will function properly and not die off. And again, that's the easy explanation. I could get into the details if you want your eyes to roll back into your head.
I might.
And in addition, we're funding research into what they call iPSC, induced pluripotent stem cells, which are stem cells that are taken right from skin or blood samples of the patient. And they turn them into stem cells, and they are doing research on turning those into the cells that make up the retina to replace what we have lost. So wow. Truly just, mind blowing. I mean, there is, it's funny when we first started our foundation 22 years ago, and I would get that call from a parent of a child whose kid just got diagnosed. And to them, you think about, you have a 6-8-year-old child and the doctor tells you they're going blind. That's a death sentence. And there wasn't much I could offer 22 years ago. We just formed, we're trying to raise some money and some awareness and, could use your help. But now I can offer hope. And there is nothing stronger in the world than hope. I feel very confident that kids born today with my eye disease will not have to lose their sight.
Cory, how far, or I don't know if you know this or not, but I mean, it seems like there's been, from the technical explanation you gave, which I'm not going to try to repeat, what you, it's just not going to sound. It's not going to sound nearly as good. So, how this seems like really, really progressive. It seems really that they've really got a lot done with this research. I mean, how soon is there? I mean, I know there's maybe not an exact date or a time frame with these things, but I mean, like, how far would you, from your guess? I mean, would you say percentage wise, do you think there is to cure to this?
I would say. And it's funny when you're saying, about timelines, man, do we try to nail researchers down on a specific timeline and they never go for it. They never go for it, and especially, someone like myself, I'm an older guy and I kind of put to bed the whole thing that, yes, I'm going to go blind. Okay. It's part of my life and I know it's going to be, but from a parent's perspective, man, they want to know yesterday. Mm-hmm. When is this going to happen? And you just can't nail down the researchers. But if I had to guess, the gene therapy is it's a good thing from the perspective of being able to hold on to what you have. However, the current delivery methods that they have they're pretty much in beta at this point, I guess is the best way to explain it.
Yeah.
They are working. I mean, they're working on, right now they basically attach the gene to a virus, and the virus infects the cells with the corrected copy of the gene. However, the viruses that they have are not super efficient, and depending on the disease, we're lucky with CHM in that CHM, the gene itself that's affected is quite small, so a virus can grab onto it and take it with it. Other diseases, the gene is much larger, and so a viral delivery method won't work. And so they're looking at like literally taking scrap DNA and piecing it together with a new gene, because the DNA will get into the cells. And I mean, what's really fun is listening to these researchers explain these methods, because to them, they're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And to the rest of us, we're just like, what?
I remember back to the days of biology. Man, I should have listened a little bit closer in biology class.
A little bit more, yeah. But I mean, if I had to guess, like, for instance, the iPSC-based replacement therapy, if I had to guess, if everything goes well, and that's not always the case in research,
sure.
If everything goes well, 3 to 5 years, they'll start human trials.
Wow. That's crazy.
So it is. I mean, this is 15 years ago. This was science fiction. Literally science fiction.
I mean, what disease? I mean, no research here, no expert here by any stretch of the means, but I mean, what disease goes from you're aware that it exists, and then even 20 years later having a potentially, I mean, obviously this is all, these are estimated time frames, so to at least get to the human testing part, but to be at a point within like 20 years where there might actually be a cure, there's a cure on the forefront, at least it's being worked on, which without it's just crazy without the and you'd mentioned too, which I find fascinating. There's only usually about 7,000 or so, you said, people that are affected by this, but obviously to those 7,000 people, that's a big deal. That's a big problem, right? So it doesn't really matter the number, but it's this potentially neglected group of people, and not necessarily that they were neglected from everybody, but at the same time, obviously the numbers are so small, like you said. It was like, well, who's gonna back this? What corporations are gonna really put in the effort on this? And the fact that it was really just it was kind of I don't know. It's you without this foundation, there wouldn't be a cure, or at least on the forefront, there wouldn't be hope, right?
Yeah, no, there truly wouldn't. It really takes. And it's something I've met people, representatives from other rare disease organizations, and it's always, the same thing. How do you raise your voice? How do you get people to notice? And, unfortunately, once you get beyond the affected patient, their family members, and their friends and coworkers, it's a pretty small circle.
Yeah.
And it's very tough to break beyond that circle, and where you get, quote unquote, the real money is.
Right.
I mean, I'm still waiting. I'm still hopeful that someday I'm going to get that phone call from a multi-billionaire that just got diagnosed with choroideremia, and all our problems will be, all our financial issues will be taken care of at that point. That hasn't happened yet. But
what question is like what? You mentioned you were able to fund these research by, it was $4 million, right? I think it was.
Yeah, over 4 million at this point. Yeah.
How much faster for the billionaires or multimillionaires listening to this podcast, right? What's the number, right? What's the number that is there a number that helps accelerate this even faster? Like, if you had another extra $5 million, would that speed potentially? I know that there's no guarantee, but would it speed up the cure by a certain time frame, you think?
It could. It could, just for the fact that researchers working on limited budgets, if their budget was unlimited, they'd be able to hire more staff and more helpers,
Sure.
and maybe push this thing through even quicker. It would also allow us to explore even more avenues of potential treatments and therapies. There are literally thousands of drugs that are right now FDA approved and on the market. Okay. Could one of those drugs potentially have, an effect for certain types of a disease, and not just choroideremia, but, any other disease? Well, maybe it could, maybe it can't. Well, you need a pretty good chunk of money to go through every one of those drugs and screen
Right.
them to see if they have some type of effect,
Right.
So things like that, that maybe there is a potential out there. But, without that extra funding, those are the things that we don't have the luxury to explore the more esoteric possibilities of a treatment or cure. So we have to really pick and choose. We have a wonderful science advisory board that helps us with choosing which projects to fund.
Right.
So that we can really maximize the dollars that we do raise.
Yeah, and it seems like you're very focused in, because you are connected in with the researchers, the scientists, which are guiding where they need the funding, which is huge. I mean, so if you're, again, you are looking to donate to the organization, or, that's, I mean, it's really, again, you're guiding and directing it into the right places, and it's clearly working.
It is. I mean, and I'm very, happy of the fact that we do watch our expenses.
Yeah.
We do things as, and it's tough to do when you're a small charity, that, the percentage of money you have to spend on various expenses, because you're not raising as much money, it makes for a higher, so a lot of your small charities, excuse me, their expenses run usually 25 to 30% is overhead. Ours is about 9%. And we work really hard on trying to keep those expenses as low as possible.
9%.
Because that's it's and again, that allows us to maximize those dollars. It's all about, being able to do that. And we are very lucky with some of the researchers that we have worked with over the years. I'll point out one. I'll call him out. His name is Dr. Chm MacDonald. Same last name, yes, no relation. But he's an ophthalmologist and geneticist, and invented the blood test that diagnoses our eye disease.
Wow.
And he got into choroideremia research almost by accident.
How'd that happen?
He was working on a fellowship up in Canada, and on genetic fellowship. And one of his, he got a call from somebody from a different department, I think it was, or something like that. But, have you ever heard of this disease, and would you like to maybe do some research on it? There was like a very large family in Canada that were affected. And so he started literally visiting door to door with these different members of this family and doing quick exams and things like that. And then he started getting into it. And so he decided to go back to school and become an ophthalmologist as well. So here's this guy. And so for him, this is like an extension of his family. That, and we consider him that too. We've had a running joke for years. He calls me the son I never knew existed. I call him the father I never knew I had. He calls my son his grandson. It's hilarious. Nicest, sweetest man, and brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant man. And yet, here he was. He decided that he wanted to help focus on this disease that nobody ever heard of. And that's just one example of many I could give you. That it was just, sometimes happenstance. just, kind of fell into our lap, and he's been a driving force with us for years.
That's just really cool that you're connected to the researchers, and also they have committed themselves to focusing in on this particular disease, right? There's a lot of degenerative degenerative diseases out there. It's hard enough to say choroideremia, by the way, and then all these other words.
Yeah, I know. Go with CHM. It's easy.
Yeah, and it's tough to.
But some of these researchers that we are funding, we're not their only source of funding, and our eye disease isn't the only one. Like, for instance, this IPSC thing, to replace what we've lost. That's a gentleman, Dr. David Gam, up in Wisconsin, a big friend of the foundation. But he's working on choroideremia. He's also working on retinitis pigmentosa, diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration, a whole litany of them. And we were, we weren't on his list initially. Yeah. And one of our members, one of my dear friends, who unfortunately we lost a few years ago, met with him at a convention and basically said, okay, here's choroideremia. Here's our issues, and what do we need to do to get us into this? And again, maximizing the limited dollars that we have. Yeah, we can't afford a multi-million-dollar project, which is what this gentleman was working on. But we could afford to pay the salary of a research assistant.
Wow.
For him to help him in the lab. And by doing so, and sometimes it's buying a piece of lab equipment that isn't covered in somebody else's grant.
Right.
Things like that. And to help us get our foot in the door. And it's all about maximizing.
So tell me.
And it's a strategy that so far it's worked for us. And I think another thing that helps us along the way too is, we have our board of directors. And every person on our board of directors either has CHM, has a spouse with it, has a child with it, or a family member with it. So for all of us, this is personal. I mean, the only person in our entire leadership of our organization that is not personally affected by CHM is our executive director. And that's it. Everybody else is, I like to kind of jokingly refer to her as she's our hired gun.
Right.
She's great. Love working with her. But, but everyone else, this is personal. This is a fight for us, and we're all fighting for the same thing. And I think that makes us, more focused, more determined. And I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but, from reading the questions you were going to ask, but I'll tell you right now, our goal for our organization is to put ourselves out of business.
It's a good one.
And that's something, that's what we want to do. We want to be able to, we don't want there to be a need for the CRF.
Yeah, that's a great goal. I mean, if you think about it, that's the whole point of the race, to come up with a cure to not have this, right? And then the faster, obviously. So the faster you can get there, the faster you've achieved your mission. And again, there really is, outside of maybe support, I would see too. And I know you guys do a lot of that too, with patients and families. It's you're funding research, but you're also helping these people that are affected by the disease.
Yeah, we call it the CHM family, and we call it that for a reason, because it truly is. And when you think about it, as I said, we started as a support network that grew into a foundation, and we still, the support, the education, the information that we have for the patients, that we can give to them is something the old saying, knowledge is power, is very, very true. And instead of just being, you leave your doctor's office after you've been diagnosed. Okay, now what the heck do I do? Well, our phone number is right on our website. Give me a call.
Yeah.
And I can, from practical advice to, updates on what's going on with research, to resources that you can tap into as someone who may be low vision, There's a lot of different things out there, and it's just a question of getting to know what they are. And so for me, it's always been, and this sounds kind of, and I don't mean to make it sound like it's an actual strategy, but it's been my experience that when you provide someone the support and the information that they need, I don't even have to ask for a donation. It's going to come.
Yep, it's true.
And I think that the patients, and I'm just, I'm making an assumption, but I know that for 22 years, I have been on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was on vacation at Yellowstone in the driveway of our rented house talking to a gentleman who had just been diagnosed because he called the number, and I think that the patients know that we really do care. We're not putting lip service to that. We really care about them and about our foundation and about what we are doing. And I think that comes through. And I think that is a big chunk of our success as to getting us to where we are today. We really do care about the patient. And I mean, heck, it's funny. We hold a conference every other year. And our next one's coming up in Rochester, New York in June. And every time we're having one of these, I will speak to at least one or two patients coming into the conference who are coming to their first conference. And being a rare disease, many of these people have never met anybody else with choroideremia. And they're nervous about that. And I always say to them, hey, John, you're a member of the Facebook group, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the situation. You're coming to a family reunion. You just haven't met the family members yet. You've met them on Facebook. You might know their name, but now you're going to get to meet them face to face. That's really what it is. I said, factor in science updates on top of that. And, I mean, come on, how many conferences start off with a pizza party and open
Sounds
bar?
good to me. Yeah.
Okay. That's the way we start our conferences every year, and that is just, it truly is. And every time after the conference, that same person will come up to me and say, you were absolutely right.
Yeah.
And it's just that vibe, and it's not contrived. It really is that
because
way.
Is it what do they say to you that what's the biggest thing that they walk away at those conferences from? Is it the camaraderie? Is it the fact that they get to actually talk to somebody who can really relate because they have the same issue, or is it something else?
I think that's a big part of it. And I get that. I get people that they love coming and talking to the researchers, because these researchers, they're accessible. They're nice people, and again, you normally you see those letters PhD, and it gets a little intimidating, I mean, there was, there's a lab in Boston called the Pelly Lab, where they work on developing adaptive technologies for people with low vision. And for several years, I was one of their testers, where if what they were working on fell within the parameters of what I experience with the restricted visual field and night blindness and things like that, they'd call me in, and I got to play with their prototypes, which was awesome. Cool. and give them feedback. I literally played with the night vision devices that our military currently uses.
That's cool.
Because they figured that, if a blind guy can get around the streets of Boston at night with this stuff, then I guess it's good enough for our military stuff, But that you walk into this lab and you walk down this hallway going towards Dr. Pelly's office, and there's 4 doors on your right hand side, and each door has 2 nameplates on it, and every single nameplate has the letters PhD after it. So by the time you get to the head of the lab's office, you're going, Yeah, I'm dumb. But like I said, these people, the researchers, and it's a blessing. It really is. And I don't know why we're so lucky. Call it divine intervention if you'd like. But every one of these people that we've had speak at our conferences over the past 22 years or 20 years, we had our first one in 2002. Every one of them is accessible.
Yeah.
And every one of them has that wonderful ability to take these complicated concepts and put them down on the lower shelf for us small brains to understand. And it's phenomenal. And it's something that I never, ever lose my appreciation for. I never lose my appreciation for the fact that, you know, in the support networks that we have on Facebook, and we have a message board based one called mychm.net. And we're on Instagram and Twitter, and, every now and then I've been at this long enough. I can answer most general questions, but every now and then someone comes up with a question that I may not know the answer to, or I'm not sure of. And I have this mental list of researchers in my head, about 7 of them, that I know I can email with this question, and I will have an answer within 24 hours. And an answer that everyone can understand.
That's unheard of, especially the access to that too. The access to the research, and not only the fact that you're getting it quick, getting the information back quick, but also just your connection is huge.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know why, but we're blessed that we have that, because there are so many people, and especially the newly diagnosed, that just have this, long list of questions. And it's just like, and to be able to just say, okay, it's going to be okay. Now, here's what you need to do. Here's what you want to do for your child. Make sure they have a good pair of sunglasses. Make sure they wear a ball cap, things like that. Because we're, not just night blindness, but we get pretty sensitive to glare.
Well,
and
it's just so fascinating, because when you think about it, it's such a small, as you said, it's such a rare disease. And if you think about it, if you are on the other side, I mean, you're experiencing symptoms, and then you go to Google this thing, you realize, hey, there's not a lot of support out there. There's not a lot of support. I mean, it's not unlike a lot of other diseases out there where there's, a ton of other organizations and a ton of funding around it, right? I mean, you guys were really you were the pioneer, really, or you are the pioneer, really, of this disease. So it's like, to have that is huge, right? It brings hope.
It does. And like I said earlier, hope is the most powerful thing you can give to the family. To be able to say to that parent nowadays whose kid just got diagnosed, that, when I walk outside my door, I have to open up my white cane and make my way around, and do it slowly, because even canes aren't perfect. Yeah. And you still walk into things, and don't get me on the subject of wet floor signs. We have a theory. When they build those things, they install these insidious magnets that attract them to a blind person's foot, because we launch them all the time, but I can now tell a parent that your kid's not going to have to pick up that cane. Yeah, most likely. Depending on how fast. Obviously, the one really screwy thing about CHM is that it can go really super slow, or it can progress really fast, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Even among siblings, the progression rates vary widely. I even know identical twins where one twin progressed faster than the other.
Yeah.
And they have the same DNA.
There's no reason for it.
It's one of those. And we're actually funding research on that, because Well, there's two brothers that both of them genetically have been confirmed as having choroideremia, and yet one of them, and he's in his 30s, has zero symptoms. His eyes look perfectly normal. And so we're funding this research study right now on, basically asking the question, why? And because because the theory is if an answer can be found, that potentially could be a key to be able to mimic that with any patient to slow down or stop
before you get those worsening symptoms.
Exactly. So, so again, like I said, there's a lot of different avenues that we're looking into, and that's one potential. I mean, I have a brother that he's affected. He's 4 years older than I, and he legally drove till he was about 50 years old, whereas I never drove. Yeah. So there's that, like I said, a big difference in the variance. So, but like I said, when I get that call from the parent, I can provide them with the hope. I can provide them with information. This is something that you cannot put a price tag on, because now that parent, instead of floundering and wondering what the heck do I do, now has a place to go that's going to help them, that's going to provide resources. We have a resources page on our website, patient toolkit.
I was on there. That's it's definitely one of the largest resource sections I've ever seen on a website, especially with this. Like, oh my gosh, it's awesome. I mean, it's incredible though. I mean, it's what you guys have done with that. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, well, I was going to say you should have seen it before we edited it. But there's so much out there. Awesome. I mean, I've met adult CHMers that, they've gone to their eye doctor, they've been declared legally blind, and they're home, and they're, unfortunately, some of them lose their job because of it, or, for one reason or another. And they had no idea that their state has a department for the blind to provide them with mobility training and vocational rehab training and things like that, because nobody ever told them. And so one of the links in our toolkit is to, gosh, I can't recall the name of the website now, but anyways, they list every state's organization for the blind. Sometimes it's a general, for all disabilities, it's like State Department for Disabilities, that kind of thing. Other states, blindness has its own separate section. Like in my state, in Massachusetts, we have the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind, so, and every state has different, depending on the state, there's different things. Like I don't know about every state. I know my state, like for instance, in the state of Massachusetts, all public transportation is free for me and a sighted guide. So if my wife and I go to Boston for the day, we can hop on the T and, not have to pay for it. Things like that. And, some states, you get a break on your property taxes.
They might not know that too, especially if this is new. It's not like this isn't like information that they're researching every day to say, hey, well, what if I become, if I have this disease and things like that? I mean, there are mechanisms in society that are part of that solution, part of the solution to make it more, transportation more accessible and that type of thing, right? That's just.
Yeah, and providing those resources is super important, because you have some people that there may not be a family history. They could be a brand new mutation where nobody else in the family, and they have no idea they even have it. Like when you're younger, you have night blindness. Well, how the heck do I know that I have night blindness?
Dark,
I just know I don't see well at night, but it's tough to, it's kind of tough to compare. Okay, I know that I really suck at playing hide and seek in the dark. But or you might just think, as your periphery's going, you might just think that you're klutzy. Because you bounce off of something. If you don't have the family, I mean, in a way, I was lucky. Yeah. I had an extensive family history, so it was known. But for those that don't, they get, sometimes these guys, they get into their mid-20s and they may have just gotten out of college, just got married, they're starting their career and their life, and then boom, no license, no
Where
job.
do you go? It's like,
everything's gone. Yeah. And being able to have those resources for them is just, like I said.
Yeah, and you guys have really thought of the
depth
of those resources too, in terms of, you mentioned about the statewide the statewide organization, or the state organizations that have these different options for people that have the disease, or just blindness in general too. What options are available for that? But knowing where to go, just going to Google, or where to research that, it's a lot. I mean, so if you have it, obviously it's go to the organization, go to your organization, find out what the resources are, get set on the right track. And I'm sure that also probably helps them de-stress a little bit too, because they know that you have that access, so you can point them in the right direction, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
right.
And they also know
that's a huge part too.
Yeah.
If
I don't know it, I'm going to find it.
The fact that you can pick up the phone.
That's what
what organizations? What even? There's. I mean, I'm not saying they're not out there, but at the same time, what direct points of access do you have? And like you said, pretty much everybody in the leadership of the organization is affected by that, right, in some way or fashion. So, I mean, they can relate to it. It's you become like the ultimate resource for anybody who has this rare disease.
Yeah.
Right.
And you become the ultimate
so it's like
advocate
you're helping,
as well.
Not just helping them deal with it, but you're also helping with the cure, which is that. I mean, both of those things, which I'm thinking to myself, like, gosh, like, I'm going to go out of my wallet and definitely donate to you guys directly, because this is what I love about doing the podcast, because I get to learn about all these different nonprofits and what solutions that they offer. But, and I have a family, I have a family member on my end who's is affected by blindness. And, again, regardless, but your organization has done such a great job of staying connected to the researchers and really just almost like operating like a really, really, really good small business that pays attention to their customers, that is available, that responsive, and, really delivers well. I mean, you guys have done all of that, which is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a passion, and it truly is something that, I'm very lucky. I have a very understanding wife.
Definitely important.
Who has allowed me to, dive into this and really do this. And and not just me, but other members, same thing. That it does take time. It does take that I think passion is really what drives us all. Is that, if you put yourselves, it's one thing to be an affected person like myself, but you put yourselves in the shoes of a young mom whose, 5-6-year-old kid just got diagnosed. And she's not only dealing with the fact that her son has this eye disease, but the fact that it came from her, because it's an X-linked disorder. Okay. Let me tell you something. They talk about women with PMS and you don't want to get in their way. You don't want to get in the way in front of a CHM mama bear, because they want this done and they want it done now. Yeah. Because that's their child. And you know something? I'm standing right there with them.
That's a, I have a child myself, so I couldn't imagine, that, what to do. I mean, now there is something to do. So if you're listening to the podcast, obviously, go start by going to curechm.com or curechm.org. .org, yes.
curechm.org.
And see the resources. I mean, I've just incredible. If you look at for patients and families, you look at the research. I mean, it took me a good hour just to get through a portion of the site. For the amount of resources that you have, I mean, you clearly have done a lot of work on that. And But the fact of
Yeah.
The where your dollars go, and the fact that you guys have gone so far with the research in now to the point where that you're maybe a couple of years away from actually doing human trials on this, and getting so close to that. I mean, man, like that's just it's incredible. Yeah,
It's exciting. It truly is exciting, and it's what helps keep me positive. And it's something that, well, I don't know. I've been accused of being a Pollyanna at sometimes,
right.
or maybe I'm just singing that Monty Python song of always look on the bright side of life. But I try to tend to do that as much as possible, and doing what I do. Not a lot of people say they love their job. To me, this isn't a job. It's what I do, and I love what I do, and I look forward to what I'm doing. And it makes it very tough to be down. I mean, sure, okay, when my beloved 49ers got beat by the
don't
Rams,
worry, I'm a Bills fan
for a little while.
I'm a Bills fan. I'm still a couple of weeks
recovering
from that one, so I'm with you. Yep, totally get it.
Exactly. So you understand, And of course, as a Red Sox fan, I went from the early '60s when I first started watching the Red Sox to 2004, saying next year.
Get there eventually.
but it was. But people have asked me, they how do you maintain such a positive outlook? And I tell them, I say, some people talk about prioritizing your life and knowing what's important and what's not important. And I guess my way to do that is, and as I tell people, every morning I do a little checklist. And I wake up, check. I feel for a pulse, check. I take a deep breath, check. I open my eyes, I have another day with at least a little bit of sight, check. And so I start my day, every day starts with 4 miracles in under 30 seconds. And it's pretty tough to have a bad day after that.
Incredible. Yeah. Yeah. It's the small things you got to be appreciative of like that, right? It's
absolutely. I still, sure, I can't. All right. I've never driven. I used to drive a forklift back in my earlier, younger years, which is kind of scary when you think about it, that OSHA certified me as a forklift driver. OSHA certified forklift driver and safety instructor. I was legally blind at the time and didn't know it.
For sure.
Yeah, that's the only commentary I'll ever make on government bureaucracy. But anyway, but sure, I can't do that type of work anymore. And I loved working production facility. I used to love that kind of job. But I can't shoot pool to save my life anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, I can bowl. I still do all the cooking in my house. My wife and I, several years ago, we were redoing our kitchen and upgrading our kitchen. And so we put a little thought into it. And for someone with CHM, there's two things that are key: lighting and contrast, both big for us. And so we put a little thought into our kitchen. And we redesigned the kitchen to make it low vision friendly. And matter of fact, one of the videos on our YouTube channel, my buddy Eric, who also has CHM, he lives in an apartment, but he too did some adjusting in his kitchen. And we did a little webinar called CHM in the Kitchen, and kind of touring you through our respective kitchens and showing what we did to be able to make it easier to continue cooking. And I still enjoy to cook, and I still do it. It takes me a little longer. My wife will not let me use the electric slicer anymore.
Yeah.
You lose the tip of one finger, and then all of a sudden
might be another check off your list there.
I don't know.
Or something you wouldn't check, should I say.
But the thing is, it's always, you focus on what
and
you
that's
can
it.
do, not what you can't do. And people think, yeah, it's not just, and it's not just blindness, any disability. You look at, okay, yeah, I've been legally blind for almost 2/3 of my life, and I'm 58 now. So, well, what did Cory do in between there besides helping to start a foundation and everything over the last 20 plus years? Would you think that I would earn a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo and a 2nd-degree black belt in combat Hapkido? Did. Would you, I worked for 5 years as a professional clown and animator. And I was legally blind.
No, that's got to be cool.
Which is, by the way, the best part-time job ever.
That's great.
Come on, you get out there, you act like an idiot, and you get paid for it. It's great.
Hey, there's some people that don't necessarily have the official job of that, but probably would. They wouldn't mind signing up for any job that has that kind of expectation. But yeah.
When I decided to go into it, it was one of my cousins actually got me into it. And when I decided I was going to do it, I'll never forget my mother said, "You've been a clown all your life. Now you're just going to get paid for it."
Of course you would say that. Yep.
I was like, yeah.
Nothing you can say about that, Cory. Nothing you can say about that either. They got you.
Yeah, but the bottom line is that you can, no matter what your disability is, you can stretch your boundaries. You don't have to stay within what you perceive yourself you have to be in. Stretch them out a little bit, man, within reason. Obviously, I'm not going to go take pilot lessons, but I am going to try some stuff. Why not? And if it doesn't work, well, heck,
like
I'll
you
find
said, I mean,
something else to do. But the whole key, and I've said this again many times to parents, it's something to always keep in mind with your child and something to drill into them. Blindness is not a wall. It's a speed bump. It might slow me down. It might divert me a little bit. It sure as heck ain't going to stop me.
That's a great way to look at it. Well, and like you said, too,
going
back to your checklist of items that you touch base or that you check off in the morning, right? It's like you said, if you have those things, then you try things and things don't work or you don't like them or you're not comfortable with them, with any kind of disability, then you try other things, right? That's the beautiful part about life is if you don't like something, you can just try something different. It's not... Nobody's holding you to the fire or anything like that. It's and the same thing goes with the way we think, and that's the whole point of this podcast which is talking about solutions, or we're talking about cures here, cures that are on the forefront of a cure for this type of disease, this type of blindness. I mean, the model that that other organizations can follow that might be handling maybe other parts, other research, or other different types of blindness, or even other diseases for that matter, right? Other diseases that don't have the same, maybe the same amount of people that are affected, right? I mean, you guys are really paving the way for that by providing them with the resources and the like I said, and aspects of a great small business, right? The right resources, the right access, the right, all of these things that you would expect out of a great experience. I mean, is huge. That's it. But again, it's you were talking about the solutions, right? We can dwell on the problems all day long. We can dwell on, dealing with the disability. And sort of the mental challenges that that come along with that, the stresses that come along with that. But it's also you can shift that, like you said, you can shift that over to using that as power to something that's bigger and something that maybe they wouldn't even thought of if they weren't affected by this. So that's huge.
Yeah, and going blind can be a very frightening thing, and that's a given. Okay, matter of fact, I read a study once that for many people, fear going blind worse than they fear death. I mean, it's at that level. And fear is the one thing I learned when I studied martial arts is that fear is a natural thing and we all have it. and we all fear things.
Yeah.
Now the question becomes, what are you going to do with it? Because like any other emotion, fear can be a tool. How are you going to use it? What are you going to do? You know, I may seem like this great guy, and do I fear going blind? Absolutely. I would be lying through my teeth if I said I'm not afraid. Yes, I am. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Well, I'm taking that fear and I'm putting it into something that's useful. I'm pushing this organization forward as hard as I can and as fast as I can. And I'm sorry that over the years, yes, I am sure I stepped on a few toes here and there. And I apologize, and I have apologized for doing that, you know, but it's just, you know, it's the mentality I have, man. I'm in a fight. I want to save my sight. I want to save the sight of all of my friends, all of my CHM family members. I want us all to have our sight. And well, sometimes you got to, you know,
right.
like they say, you got to break a few eggs.
You have to break. Sometimes you got to break it down to build it back up, or break down parts of it to build it back up, and that's huge. Corey, to wrap up here, what other points would you want to share with anybody here that's listening that either has, you know, a family member that's affected, friends? We all know people that have been affected by blindness and just really any disabilities, right? What would you say to really anybody dealing with a disability, blindness, that type of thing, in closing?
Well, for choroideremia specifically, one thing to keep in mind is that even if you have some other type of visual impairment, whether that be macular degeneration or retinopathy or retinitis pigmentosa, which is another retinal degenerative disease, just because choroideremia isn't quote unquote your disease. Okay, I belong to like 4 or 5 different RP groups on Facebook as well as the CHM groups. Because what we are working on, what we are funding, may have a trickle-down effect towards your disease as well, and vice versa. And so, you know, supporting us doesn't mean that you're being a traitor to your disease. Being in touch with us doesn't mean that you're, you know, discounting what's going on with your disease. It's just a way. I have, you know, one of the wonderful things about Google is they have the Google Alerts and Google Scholar Alerts. And I have them signed up for choroideremia, for RP, you know, like a litany of different diseases. So I get research updates, you know, article updates on a lot of different things that are going on. And some of the stuff, I don't see the tie-in. But there's other stuff that does. And that's the stuff I'm going to keep my eye on. You know, for instance, there's a thing going on right now. They're in phase 1 for a treatment called optogenetics, which is literally reprogramming cells that are in the back of the eye so they do the job of a photoreceptor. It is amazing science. They're not working on choroideremia. They're doing a phase 1 with RP. But you know something? That might work with us too. So I'm going to keep my eye on that. And so, you know, that would be my parting, you know, message to anybody with a visual impairment. Visit our website and learn. The more you can learn, the better off you're going to be. And if you want to chat sometime, call me, email me. We can set up a time to talk if you want. And for anyone with visual impairments or any other eye disease, life doesn't stop, man. There was a gentleman back in our old email-based support group. We used to call him our elder statesman because he was, probably 20, 30 years older than most of us that were in that group. His name was Wayne. He was a great guy. He was fully blind. And he worked as an alcohol and drug rehab counselor. And he wrote an email one day, and I actually I saved it as a Microsoft Word document, and I still reread it now and then. But he wrote this email where he talked about the day that he woke up and he'd lost his last bit of sight. And he got up in the morning, he went to the bathroom, and the light bulb, he was down to basically light perception. He could see light and dark and some shapes, and that was about it. and he went to turn on the bathroom light and thought the bathroom light had burned out. And it wasn't until he went to change the bulb that he realized it wasn't the bathroom light. But the key to it was, he said, so after an hour or so of ranting and raving, I realized that things really hadn't changed. And he said, I realized that the fear of going dark, of everything going dark, was worse than the actual event. And he said, we can't let our fear keep us from living the lives we want to live. And the last line of his email, he said, believe me, life doesn't stop just because someone turned out the lights.
Love it. That's a great
and that's my
there.
parting word.
Something we can all take throughout, look at every part of our lives, right? It doesn't just stop because you've been told the world is this terrible place, or it doesn't stop because you've been handed or you have a disability, or you found out you have a disability, right? It's there's all these things, all these, as you call them, speed bumps, Cory. There's all these speed bumps that we all face, right? We all face that stuff throughout their lives, but we have the choice to look at those speed bumps and say, do we want to be part? Do we want to give into the problem here? Do we want to focus our time and attention and energy to the problem, or do we want to focus it in on the solution? And the best way to become part of the solution is to get involved, to in this particular case, again, whether you're affected by this or not, or just believe in what they're doing, is what Cory and his team are doing here, is to, if you don't have the time, you don't have anything else, donate. If you do a lot of things, volunteer, donate, be part of that solution. And man, I'll tell you what, there's no better feeling in the world when you can support an organization such as great as this one, and know that you've been you're part of a cure. You're part of an organization that is helping people with a disease that is uncontrollable. It's not something that they can prevent, right? So it's so that's huge to be a part of that. So again, remember, you have the ability to become part of the solution and not the problem. It's just a choice, though, right? It's a choice that we all have every single day. And as Cory mentioned, it could be part of that checkbox that you check off every morning. Do I want to become part of the problem? Do I feel bad? Whatever. But there's a solution to that. Or do I want to focus my time and attention on the solution and move in that direction? So with that said, Cory, thanks for jumping on. Great interview today. I learned a ton. We're going to have to rewatch this podcast a couple different times to probably absorb some of the technical stuff, but just what you guys are doing are amazing. And I can't wait to have you back on. I'd like to have you back on to give an update as to the research, as to what you're doing, so we can keep this story flowing. So it's been a blast. And for everybody out there,
Thanks
for listening today, and we'll catch you next time.